hold on, Chairman. Okay, you can start, Chairman.
We're now on the record. This is the Kentucky Public Service Commission. My name is Michael Schmidt. I'm chairman of the commission. Also present today by video is Vice Chairman Kent Chandler and Dr. Talina Matthews. The purpose of our hearing today is to consider case 202000228, investigation into the transfer of ownership by Southern Water and Sewer District to Prestonsburg City Utility Commission of the wastewater system and portions of its water distribution system pursuant to KRS 278.250 and KRS 278.390. This proceeding is being reported by Ms. Candace Sackery, and transcripts will be available to anyone who wants one. The video will be the official record. This case is being streamed live over the internet. So in order to make some sense of the proceeding for anyone who might be watching this proceeding and not have any history of it, I have tried to write out in longhand a brief history of why we're here today and what we're doing. I've done it in longhand, and my penmanship is not the best, so bear with me as I try to get through this. And if I'm in substantial error, when I finish, you'll have an opportunity to correct me. In case number 2017-00044, the Public Service Commission entered an order approving the transfer of certain wastewater and water system assets from Southern to Prestonsburg City Utility Commission. KRS 278.390 provides that the Commission's orders are in effect until, among other things, they are revoked or modified. In that previous case, the parties did not obtain an appraisal of the assets to be transferred, but mutually agreed on a market value, saying that there had been extensive negotiations and that the parties were knowledgeable as to value, and that the value assigned in that other proceeding represented the actual fair market value of the assets to be transferred. Later, in case number 2018-00230, the Commission learned that the transaction had not been closed and that asset ownership had not been closed because the U.S. Department of Agriculture Rural Development Agency, which held a lien on the water distribution assets, had not approved the transfer. Rural Development withheld approval in part because there had not been an appraisal. Rural Development required an appraisal to be conducted and accepted before it would agree to release its lien on the water assets, which were the subject of the transfer agreement. The parties later obtained an appraisal which valued the transaction at $4.1 million. But Rural Development determined that the appraisal, which was to value both the water and wastewater assets, covered only the water systems, and there was a question as to whether the valuation was unduly excessive. Rural Development loan and lien did not cover or encumber the wastewater assets, and those assets were transferred pursuant to the asset purchase agreement between the parties as approved by the Public Service Commission, I think in July of 2018 or sometime perhaps in 2018. The operation of the water distribution assets, however, were assumed by Prestonsburg in perhaps late 2016, early 2017, but have yet to be transferred or operational control returned to Southern. A second appraisal was performed, and an appraisal report dated June 15th, 2020 was produced and filed in the record, and it valued the water distribution assets at $1,510,960. There are two water distribution systems or assets which were involved in this proceeding, and both of which, the transfer of both of which were previously approved by the Commission. And those assets were the Stanville-Betsy Lane system along U.S. Highway 23 in Floyd County, Kentucky, and the Pyramid system, which I think is along Kentucky Route 850. Southern and Prestonsburg have, subject to Public Service Commission approval, and with the approval of Rural Development, which is already agreed, to amend the original asset purchase agreement to provide for the transfer of the Stanville-Betsy Lane system and for Southern to retain ownership of the Pyramid system. Rural Development has agreed to the amended asset purchase agreement and to release its lien upon the Stanville-Betsy Lane system upon payment to it by Prestonsburg City Utility Commission of $1.6 million. Although the wastewater assets have been transferred by Southern to Prestonsburg, Southern has been collecting the fees charged by Prestonsburg, but has not remitted those fees to Prestonsburg, but has retained them. The apparent debt that Southern now owes to Prestonsburg City Utility Commission as a result of that is $275,000. The parties have agreed that Prestonsburg will forgive and waive payment of $137,500, or approximately one-half of the amount owed to it by Southern, and Southern will pay the balance owed in installment payments of $2,500 per month. Southern will continue to collect Prestonsburg fees for wastewater service, I think in the only two, Wayland and Eastern wastewater systems, and remit the amount owed to Prestonsburg for a management fee pursuant to a separate agreement between the parties. The purpose of the hearing today is to receive evidence on the proposed amended asset purchase agreement and whether the Public Service Commission should approve it. Is that substantially correct for the parties?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this time, the parties to this proceeding are Southern Water and Sewer District and Prestonsburg City Utility Commission. Would counsel for Southern Water and Sewer District please stand, identify himself, the client he represents, and any witnesses that he has with him today.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Bailey. I represent Southern Water. Today we have two witnesses, Jeff Prater, which is the chairman of Southern Water's board, and Grondel Potter, who is with UMG, who we contract to manage Southern Water.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bailey. And on behalf of Prestonsburg City Utility Commission.
Good morning, Chairman. I'm Kip McNally, counsel for Prestonsburg City Utilities. We have one witness here today, that's Brian Music. He's the superintendent of the Utility Commission.
Okay, thank you. And on behalf of Public Service Commission staff.
Nancy Vinsel from PSC Legal.
Okay, thank you. Now, as I understand it from the record, notice, to the extent possible, notice has been given to the public, Mr. Bailey, that this proceeding is being held this morning. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. We made a post on our Facebook page.
Thank you. Now, at this time, the proceeding will be open for comment by the public. And since there's no one in the hearing room, and because of the requirements imposed upon everybody by the COVID-19 virus, we'll have 4 or 5 minutes available by telephone for anyone who might want to call in and express an opinion or a comment about this proceeding. Is that correct, Ms. Mensel?
That's correct.
Okay. And is the telephone number on our website, or is there some other way or means of people who might be watching this proceeding who might want to call in?
The phone number is on our website. And because I have to dial a conference bridge, I will go ahead and read it out.
Hey, thank you.
Parties, person interested in making a comment can dial 502-782-2663, and when prompted to enter a conference passcode, would enter 43941, followed by the pound sign.
Okay, thank you.
And
We'll wait, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I've got the line open now, I can unmute it.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, this is Nancy Vinsel with the Public Service Commission. Is there anyone on the line? No one's on the line right now.
So apparently, there's no interest in anyone in commenting upon this proceeding, so we will now move to presentation of evidence. It is our thought, I guess, that since the Public Service Commission initiated this proceeding as a result of a phone call that Mr. Music, on behalf of Prestonsburg City Utilities Commission, made to me advising that the parties had agreed based upon the appraisal to alter the transaction, and that rural development approval, while at that time had not been obtained, it was expected that it would be based upon conversations with a representative of rural development. After that, we initiated this case in an attempt to basically get everything resolved and put to bed once and for all. After that, I think I maybe had a conversation with Mr. Prater about the same thing. In fact, I called him to make sure that my conversation with Mr. Music was known, and I told him what Mr. Music had related to me, and he agreed that that was correct. So here we are today for the purpose of trying to finalize this asset transfer, and so it's our thinking that since we initiated the proceeding, that Ms. Vinsel will call witnesses, after which council will have an opportunity to ask any follow-up questions that might be necessary. And I don't have no idea who Ms. Vinsel will call first or on whose behalf they will testify. But for instance, if Mr. Prater were called, I would expect that Mr. McNally would then ask questions, and Mr. Bailey, you'd have the next or last shot at it. We have two commissioners on the line. I do not know if either of them will ask questions, but both will have the opportunity to do so after council has completed, all council have completed the questioning. All right, Ms. Vinsel, you may proceed.
Yes, and to let everyone know, the order of witnesses I propose are Chairman Prater, Mr. Potter, and then Mr. Music.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So we call, staff calls Chairman Prater.
Mr. Prater, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may be seated. I would like to say before we start that out of an abundance of caution, between the witnesses, our custodian will come in and spray the glass, so that may take an extra minute or two, but so you'll understand that apparently is the proceeding. All right, Ms. Vinsel, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Chairman Prater.
Good morning.
For the record, can you tell us your name and your position with Southern Water District?
I'm Jeff Prater, and I'm the chairman of the board at Southern Water and Sewer District.
And you've been chairman of the board since February of this year?
February 2019, a new board was appointed, and I was elected chairman.
Apologize, I realized it was 2019, and I've just gotten confused with the year. Do you have with you the staff exhibits that were distributed at the
Yes,
start of the
I do.
hearing? For the record, I'd like to say that PSC staff exhibit number 1 is a copy of a map of the Southern Water System assets that were approved to be transferred to Prestonsburg City Utility Commission in the previous proceeding. And Staff Exhibit 2 is a copy of the original asset purchase agreement that was also filed in the previous case approving the asset transfer.
These have already been filed in the evidence in this and other proceedings, but for purposes of this proceeding, let these be marked as Exhibit 1, the map, and Exhibit 2, the original asset purchase agreement. Thank you.
This map is in color, and just to clarify, can I ask you, in the green section of the map, that there's an indication of Hippo Hill Tank?
Yes.
And is this the pyramid system?
Yes, the area highlighted in green is along Kentucky Route 850, and that is the pyramid distribution system that's spoken of in the asset purchase agreement.
Okay. And who is serving the pyramid area right now?
Currently, Prestonsburg City Utilities Commission is operating and serving those customers, operating that portion of the system and serving those customers.
Approximately how many customers are there on the pyramid portion of the system?
I believe there's 115, if I'm not mistaken. I believe there's 115 current meters that, from the information supplied to me by Prestonsburg City.
And moving on the map to the area marked in red, is this the Stanville, Betsy Lane, Herald portion of the system?
Yes, it is. And I think it was also known as the Big Sandy water system, but the area marked in red is this Stanville area along US 23.
And the Stanville area, who is operating that portion of the system now?
Prestonsburg City Utilities, they both operate it, and they operate it, bill the customers on both systems right now.
And the Stanville portion has approximately, is it around 1,000 customers?
I think just over 1,000 customers.
And within the amended asset purchase agreement, is it correct that the pyramid, the portion of the system that's known as pyramid,
Yes.
will remain with Southern?
Yes, in the amended agreement, the customers in the section known as the pyramid distribution system would be returned to Southern to operate to operate and serve, both in operating day-to-day and billing those customers and providing water to them through our treatment facility.
So the legal ownership would be returned, or would remain, if you will, with Southern?
Well, yes. In my opinion, the legal ownership of those assets would stay with Southern, and we would just retake the operations of those meters over.
And to clarify, when I say legal ownership, as I understand, as part of the operating agreement between Southern and Prestonsburg City Utility Commission, there was a transfer of beneficial ownership, but not legal ownership of the assets.
That is correct.
And also, not to beat a dead horse, but with the amended asset purchase agreement, the Stanville portion of the system will remain with, may I call it PCUC, to cut the time? Will remain with PCUC, and PCUC will now acquire the legal ownership.
That is correct.
Thank you. Chairman Prater, Southern filed a spreadsheet of revenue and expenses.
Yes,
Do you have a copy of that spreadsheet?
I think so, if I may have just a moment.
if,
I
Count-
apologize, I do not, I thought I did have,
I see your council has a copy.
You may approach.
thank you. Yes, okay.
And are you familiar with this document?
Yes, this document was prepared by Jeff Reed of our consultant, our accountant.
And what purpose was it produced for?
This document was produced to submit to the USDA rural development. They required that we show the rural development, the projected total revenue of Southern Water with and without the return of the 850 customers. This document shows the impact financially to Southern Water by all of the things contained in, I'm trying to think of how to say that. This document shows the financial impact to Southern Water with all of the things contained in the amended asset purchase agreement, including debt reduction, revenue from the 850 customers, the payment of the past sewer revenue that we owe them, that they've agreed to us to repay. So it shows the total financial impact to Southern Water for all the asset transfer.
And subject to check, would you agree that with Southern serving the Pyramid customers again, that there is approximately a net operating income gain of $58,000?
Yes, that's what this document shows. Of course, that includes debt reduction and everything that's involved. The actual day-to-day operational cost has to be subtracted from that $50-some thousand that we gain. So I definitely believe that Southern would be a little bit better off financially, but the entire $58,000 wouldn't be extra revenue or extra income because we will have to furnish the water to those customers on Route 850, and we have to, send a crew if there's a leak, and we have to read meters. And so there's some operational expenses that will come out of that $58,000. But this document does show that Southern would not be financially harmed from our current situation by the completion of this deal.
Thank you. Will the Pyramid customers be charged Southern's current rate once Southern takes over the system?
Yes, they would be charged Southern's current volumetric rate that we would be able to, and that's based on the availability of, and Mr. Potter may testify to that later, there has been a delay in obtaining the computer equipment and software for Southern to read the radio meters because of COVID-19. But yes, they would be charged the same rate that other Southern customers are charged.
And I do plan to follow up with Mr. Potter in regard to the system at Pyramid.
And I might make a note that the Pyramid customers would also pay the meter replacement surcharge because Southern would replace the meters with the radio reads to make them consistent or uniform with their other water distribution system.
I have just a few more questions for you, Mr. Prater. I noticed on the amended asset purchase agreement, which has been executed between Southern and PCUC, there's also a line for rural development to sign. I also noticed you've got before you exhibit number 2, which is the original asset purchase agreement. And I noticed that the signatories to this agreement were the then chairman of Southern Water, the chairman of PCUC, and the then mayor and may still be mayor of Prestonsburg. But rural development did not sign the original asset purchase agreement, to the best of your knowledge. Is that correct? Will rural development also sign the amended asset purchase agreement?
It is my understanding that rural development will not sign the amended asset purchase agreement because they are not a party to the negotiations between Southern and Prestonburg Utility Commission, Prestonburg City Utility Commission. They have, of course, signed off and provided documentation that they agree with the transfer, but they do not want to sign this because they were not a party to the negotiation, and they don't feel it's appropriate for them to sign the document. But they have provided, and we have submitted to evidence, their approval, written approval, and a letter of approval from Hilda Legg, the director.
Yes, thank you. And that is, I can confirm that is in the record, a copy of that. In terms of the repayment of the sewer fees, the past sewer fees that were collected, can you give me a status of the repayment?
Mr. Music and I have agreed to that those $2,500 per month payments would begin at the time that we, if based upon the time of receiving PSC approval, when we complete the asset transfer and Southern begins billing the Kentucky Route 850 customers, we will start those payments on the month that we start billing those customers. That will help Southern on the cash flow side. Those payments will begin the month that we retake the 850 customers if everything is approved.
Do you have an expected date by which you would like to see a commission order?
This being September, I would like to see a commission order that we could begin, I would like to begin that around October 1st, if that would be possible.
I have just one last question for you. In the financial management agreement, Southern will receive an administrative fee. It's a 3% fee.
Yes.
Can you tell me what the inputs were for that 3%? How it would?
There was two reasons that number came up. I thought, and I may be wrong, I think in the original asset purchase agreement there, or one of the operating documents, there was a 3% mention, but Southern Water and Sewer collects solid waste payments, and they retain a 3% administration fee for the process of collecting and remitting that solid waste payments to the county government. So that's where the 3% administrative fee came from. There was no study done. It was just uniform with the current practice that we have with the solid waste system.
Thank you. Staff has no further questions.
Mr. McNally, questions?
Yes, I have one question. Just for clarification, Mr. Prater, has Southern begun paying the current sewer fees that have been collected under the financial management agreement that were anticipated on that agreement?
Yes, we made the first payment, and I suppose the second payment would be due very soon, minus the 3% administrative fee. Yes, we've already begun that process, and we are paying the current revenue as we collect it from the sewer.
Another way another question is, so that the financial management services agreement then is effectively being implemented as of the 1st of August, I guess?
Yes, I think that would be correct. We are operating under that financial services agreement. We're remitting, I guess we could say we're remitting 97% of what we collect on the sewer revenue.
Thank you, Mr. Prater.
That's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Bailey, any questions?
Just one, Your Honor. Were you involved in the initial asset purchase, when this asset purchase came about?
No, and I think it's dated January 1st, 2017, and I only became involved in February of 2019.
That's all I have.
Vice Chairman Chandler, do you have any questions?
I do, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Prater.
Morning.
The first question I have is, at least looking at the 2017 asset purchase agreement, the city of Prestonsburg itself was a party to that agreement. Would you agree?
Yes.
And so the first amendment that's been filed in this record, it appears that Southern and Prestonsburg are parties, but the city is not. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that. It only
Okay.
has a signature line for Prestonburg, Southern City Utilities Commission, Southern Water, and the USDA.
Right. And so I guess I'd ask, since the city is a party to the agreement, and this is an amendment to the agreement, do you know if the city has signed off on the amendment?
Not to my knowledge. I know that the mayor is very up to date with everything that we've done, but I have no knowledge of any personal documents that he signed. Mr. Music may be able to. Mr. Music may be able to better answer that question.
Okay. And then, do you have a copy of the amendment in front of you?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you mind to go to the third page of that amendment?
Okay.
And on the third page of the amendment, on the fifth line, there's a recital, whereas Southern District and PCUC have been unable to consummate the transfer of the designated water assets. Do you see that?
Yes.
So in that agreement, and I can't find it in this amendment or in the asset purchase agreement, I can't find that designated water assets is a defined term, even though it's capitalized. So for the record, at least from your perspective, can you tell me what you believe to be the designated water assets that text refers to?
In my understanding and of what those designated assets refer to is shown in the staff exhibit 1 as the area highlighted in red. It's the US, we call it the US 23. It runs along Route US 23 and up the hollows. Stanville area, and the assets shown in red on staff exhibit 1.
Okay, so as far as the amendment goes, when it references the designated water assets, it's, in your opinion, the red former Sandy Valley water distribution system in PSC staff exhibit number 1.
Yes, that's and of course, and yes, and the operating return of the area in green as what I would call the Kentucky Route 850 or pyramid distribution system.
So the green and the red?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And then, last question, as far as you understand it, is for the, at least as proposed, you will be operating, again, explain the green, you'll be operating and billing that, or that will just go back to you all?
Well, I think Prestonburg has currently, I think Nancy, Mrs. Vansel used the word, Prestonburg is the current beneficial owner, but the operations of that would return to Southern, the area that's marked in green, the pyramid distribution system. Southern would serve it with water, maintenance, operating, and billing. So we would bill those customers. They would cease to be billed by Prestonburg City Utility, and they would be billed by Southern Water. And also, Southern Water would start supplying the water from our treatment plant to those customers, and Prestonburg City Utilities Commission would no longer be supplying water to those customers.
Let me ask it this way, Mr. Prater. Mr. Prater. Will those customers be served pursuant to Southern's tariff on file with the commission?
Yes, sir. Those customers will be served by Southern's current volumetric tariff and meter surcharge.
So in all regards, those will be Southern's customers.
Yes, sir.
Now, how about the red?
The red customers will be legally transferred to Prestonburg City. They will serve them, they will own them, and it will be a part of their water system.
Okay. And so,
Perpetually, I would add, yes.
and so pursuant to the financial agreement, I want to get it right, the financial management services contract, what area of the system does that apply to?
That applies to the Wayland wastewater treatment plant and the Eastern wastewater treatment plant. Southern serves those customers with water, therefore the wastewater is billed in accordance with the water usage. So Southern collects the water revenue and the wastewater revenue. So we would remit the wastewater revenue for Wayland and Eastern wastewater treatment plants to Prestonburg, minus the 3% administrative fee that we have spoken about, which is currently ongoing now.
So they'll be your old water customers, but Prestonsburg, sewer customers.
Yes, that's correct. And I guess to add, to clarify that, so if a customer has a problem with their water service, Southern would dispatch people to take care of that. If they have a problem with their sewer service, Prestonburg City Utilities Commission would dispatch somebody to take care of that.
Okay. So, but you will bill them for the sewer service?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so I just want to make clear that in terms of level of service, rates charged, everything like that on the water side, it will be fully compliant with the statutes and regulations on the water side, correct?
That's correct.
As it relates to the commission. Okay. And then on the sewer side, you all will be billing, but you won't have a service obligation and you won't have tariffs necessarily for those customers. They'll be served pursuant to PCUC rates.
That's correct.
Okay. And your ability to disconnect those customers is limited to the terms of this agreement.
I'm not sure I followed that. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, your ability, Southern's ability to disconnect or terminate customers is only laid out in this agreement, correct?
Yeah, I'm not sure if, I'm not sure if we actually discussed that or if that's contained in the agreement. I'm not sure if we have that in the agreement. It would just be generally understood that.
On the bottom of page 2,
Pardon me.
on the bottom of page 2 of the financial, do you have the financial management services contract in front of you?
Let me look. Let's see. Oh,
If I may approach again, Your Honor.
You may.
yes. Thank you. Okay, yes, I have it now. Okay,
All right, so page 2 of that agreement,
okay. Okay, I'm on page 2.
paragraph 6 says, "The district shall charge each residential customer in accordance with the tariff schedules established by the agency as amended from time to time." So that's what we were talking about earlier. The actual tariffs that you will be billing for aren't your tariffs filed with the Public Service Commission, they're PCUC's tariffs, right?
The wastewater tariffs, the water service tariffs would be, the wastewater
Right.
tariffs would not be. Correct.
Right. The way, we're just talking about wastewater here. The agency shall give the district notice of its initial or amended tariff sheet at least 30 days prior to the date of the district's billing date. The initial tariff sheet is attached here to Exhibit A and is hereby incorporated by reference as if fully set forth herein. The district, that's you all, right?
Yes.
The district shall perform the financial services in accordance with the district's established billing and collection procedures. And it basically is otherwise referred to here as the residential retail billing procedures, as may be amended from time to time. The district will only terminate a customer's water service for non-payment in accordance with its residential retail billing procedure. Is the residential retail billing procedure a document that's been filed into this record?
My assumption is that the residential retail billing procedure is just our standard billing procedure for all Southern's, water customers, which would be pursuant to the current tariff on file with the Public Service Commission. That would include billing dates and all the other aspects of billing and collecting water revenue.
I would likely agree, but I don't know that I'd necessarily glean that from the agreement. And I guess what I would ask is, it says the district will only terminate a customer's water service for non-payment in accordance with its residential retail billing procedure. So does this say that the agreement that you all can or can't disconnect somebody's water service for non-payment of sewer service?
In my opinion, it's saying we can only terminate for the failure to pay their water service. Yeah, that's a question that I really cannot answer. I suppose that would depend on how you read it, because if they have not paid their water and sewer bill to Southern Water, they are not in compliance in normal times outside of the COVID-19. And if I could retract what I said, I do believe that would give Southern the right, because the residential retail billing procedure would be that if a customer has used 4,000 gallons of water and 4,000 gallons of wastewater has gone through, then we are asking them to pay or remit to Southern Water what of the services they've received. So Southern Water would be the only entity that could actually enforce that payment option. So the residential retail billing procedure, in my opinion, is both collecting water and wastewater fees. And if they fail to pay those, Southern is the only entity with the ability to enforce that payment by disconnect. So I would think that Southern would not only be able to terminate a customer service, but they would be obligated to do so, because there would be the only entity with the ability to do that.
So this has come up on occasion, you can imagine, over the years.
Yes.
For folks who provide water service for areas that they don't necessarily provide the sewer service. And so just so we can talk through it for a second, the answer you just gave was effectively that Southern will be able to disconnect customers for not paying a rate that is not in Southern's tariff.
Yes, I don't, and Mr. Music may have a different opinion on this, I don't, but it's my opinion that Southern would have to provide that disconnect service because wastewater and potable water are interconnected. The likelihood that a person would pay only their water portion is unlikely. If, for example, a customer had a $100 bill for water and wastewater, and they paid $50, I think that $25 would be credited to wastewater and $25 to sewer, potable water and $25 to sewer. They are so interconnected that I don't think you could separate them because you can't go to a physical location and just turn off the sewer. You have to turn off the water.
The next paragraph, though, speaks exactly to that any partial payments received from a customer shall be first applied to any amount due the district for utility services rendered, and the remaining portion of the payment, if any, shall be applied to amounts charged by the agency.
Well, that does, you're correct.
And so I'll just say the way I read the final sentence about termination is that the district will only terminate a customer's water service for non-payment in accordance with its residential retail billing procedure, which, as you stated, is laid out in your all's tariffs as it relates solely to water.
Yes.
So just speaking for myself, I would have read that final sentence as saying that you can only disconnect water if they don't pay their water bill. And then the next sentence says that if for partial payments, it'll be applied initially to the water bill. I just want to make sure I get your understanding of what you believe from Southern's perspective of what this agreement says on this front, so that we can know how to adjudicate it.
Yes. Yes. Well, and the way that I read it, we would only disconnect if they have not paid their water bill. I think we need to clarify that with Prestonburg City Utilities Commission and the Public Service Commission. Also, I might say that Mr. Music or Prestonburg City Utilities Commission has some experience with an agreement exactly like this with another utility, so they may have some insight that I don't have on how it's been handled in the past in a proper or a equitable way to handle that situation.
Okay. And then the last question I have, Mr. Prater, is just have you all looked into the cost of obtaining the insurance and the bond coverage in paragraph 8 of that agreement?
I think it would be, we can double check with our liability carrier. I think Southern's people are already bonded and covered. I don't think there would be any additional cost. We can verify that with the insurance company, though.
And the only reason I ask is because the agreement, if it's approved by the commission, the language there is shall, right? And so insofar as it's prohibitively expensive or whatever it costs, if it starts costing more than the 3% that you're getting for that, then that would be something we'd like to know before we consider the actual agreement.
Yes, I can understand that. I don't expect there to be any additional charge from the insurance carrier to be bonded for such a small amount of collections in relation to the amount they're bonded for now and collecting, because this basically would be only about $7,500 a month in fees that we collect on behalf of Prestonburg City Utility Services. So I see that as a minimal, probably zero cost from the insurance carrier.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it, Mr. Prater. That's all the questions I have, Chairman.
Commissioner Matthews, do you have any questions?
I don't have any, thank you.
I have a few. I know that you weren't on the commission of Southern Water and Sewer District at the time of the original asset purchase agreement was executed, but you were, and at all times have been a customer. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Right.
yeah. I've been a customer since the 1990s.
And as I understand it, perhaps Mr. Music may be better able to answer this question or confirm what I'm going to say. Southern Water and Sewer District had 3 wastewater treatment systems, one at Harold, one at Eastern, and one at Wayland. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Southern had been unable for some period of time to hire and maintain qualified operators at one or more of those systems. Is that correct?
That is my understanding, yes, sir.
And Southern basically was facing enforcement of perhaps severe civil penalties from the Environmental Energy and Environment Cabinet as a result of its failure to comply with state and federal laws and regulations pertaining to wastewater treatment systems. Is that correct?
That's been my understanding, yes.
So Prestonsburg, apparently for some time prior to the time the asset purchase agreement was executed, originally had basically taken over operational control of those systems. I think that's correct. Isn't that right? And Prestonsburg agreed to basically come in and provide operators and was running the system on Southern's behalf, correct?
That was my understanding, and that may go back all the way to 2016 in the records that I've read. I believe as far back as 2016, Prestonsburg City was trying to help with the sewer, wastewater treatment plants because they were in a state of disarray.
And the wastewater treatment plant, especially I think I remember at Wayland, was in need of some serious rehabilitation or upgrades. Is that? Do you
That
know
is my understanding. The station was just completely.
Okay. Now, at Harold, the Harold wastewater treatment plant, the water that furnishes that plant and furnishes its customers would be supplied or is being supplied by a portion of the system known as the US 23 or the Stanville Betsy Lane water system. Is that correct?
The portion along US 23 that's highlighted in red on the Exhibit 1, it is my understanding that Pikeville City provided part of the water and Prestonsburg provided part of the water prior to Prestonsburg taking over the operations of it. And at this current time, Prestonsburg provides all the water on that current corridor and the Harold wastewater treatment plant.
So assuming someone attached to or connected to the Harold wastewater system didn't pay the bill, that would be, Southern wouldn't be involved in all in that. That would be Prestonsburg.
That's correct.
Because Prestonsburg provides the water as well, correct?
Yes, that's correct. That would be, yeah, Prestonsburg would deal with that. And the only issue in maybe in disconnection would be at the Wayland and the Eastern wastewater treatment plants. And I think we're only talking about a small number, maybe a couple hundred people or less.
But the reality is that the city of Prestonsburg has taken over control of these wastewater treatment plants at Eastern and Wayland, and initially assumed control or operational management control on behalf of Southern, at
Yes.
Southern's request. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's correct.
And yet if Southern can't cut off the water in order to enforce Prestonsburg's right to payment for use of the sewer, then Prestonsburg basically has an asset that costs it a lot of money, but is of absolutely no benefit to it. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say, and as I said before, the water, potable water and wastewater are interconnected in the sense that you're billing for both, and you can't just terminate wastewater service, you can only terminate the potable water service, which stops the wastewater.
The reason, and I probably asked Mr. Music, and he may or may not know, but as I understand it, when the federal prison was built at the old Pevler Mining Complex on Martin County, what they now call some kind of industrial park, City of Prestonsburg ran the water, and in a spirit of regionalization that was somebody's brainchild, Prestonsburg provided water. They allowed Martin County to provide part of the water, and City of Paintsville was to provide sewer. And as what happened is that once the sewer system left the Johnson County line, nobody would pay the sewer bill, and certain district courts in one county or another refused to enforce payment of the bill until the City of Prestonsburg agreed to basically terminate water service to those customers so that Paintsville could basically get paid for the sewer services. But obviously, one way or the other, if this transfer is approved, if it's going to get my vote, Prestonsburg has to be able to request, and Southern has to agree to cut off the water service to people that don't pay their sewer bill.
It'd be my opinion, there's no other way that it could logistically work.
Now, on the originally, the original agreement was that Prestonsburg was to get the 3 wastewater treatment plants, which have now been transferred to it, but it was also to get, for the price of $2,140,000, the Stanville Betsy Lane system and the pyramid system. But under the amended agreement, the pyramid system will be retained by Southern. Can you tell us why Southern is retaining that? Is that something that rural development required that Prestonsburg no longer wanted, or what was the reason why pyramid is remaining with Southern?
There was a few different reasons. Rural development didn't have anything to say about it. It was a situation where that it was negotiated between Prestonsburg and Southern to retain those customers. One thing that plays into that is that the 850 customers were originally a part of Southern. They that area was, my understanding, the hydrology was designed so that Southern could serve those customers with the water tank. So the infrastructure was built for Southern to treat and supply water to that area. There's a significant change in elevation, it's my understanding, from Prestonsburg system to the last customer on the Kentucky Route 850. So it would be very easy for Southern to take those customers back into our system. Obviously, the other part that myself and the other board members, I believe all of us considered, is the operating revenue from the pyramid system, the Route 850. That operating revenue would help Southern offset some of the other cost, and that's all calculated in the spreadsheet that was entered into evidence that we would be depending on the operating revenue from those customers to help make this overall deal financially sound for Southern, or to be, I hesitate to use the word, but maybe revenue neutral. At least that it wouldn't harm us in a financial situation. The revenue from those customers is very important to make this asset transfer deal work without Southern's customers being adversely impacted financially.
Now, as I understand it, under the terms of the original asset purchase agreement as approved by the Public Service Commission, Southern was to receive in cash and kind, or payment, loan payments, $2,140,000, and that amount was in fact paid by the city of Prestonsburg to Southern, correct?
Yes, sir.
And under the revised agreement, Southern not only gets to keep the pyramid customers, right,
That's correct.
but it gets the benefit of another $1,600,000 that Prestonsburg is going to pay on the rural development loan, right?
That's correct.
Plus $137,000 in debt relief for the sewage collection fees that Southern owes to Prestonsburg. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So is this a good deal for Southern?
Well,
Southern's customers?
I would not use the word good deal. I believe it's a resolution to a long-term issue. I think it's a way that both utilities can move forward. My understanding, rural development had to, the deal as a whole, we had to prove to rural development that this amended purchase agreement would not substantially harm Southern. And so all the factors that you just mentioned are a part of the projections over the next 12 months. So it took all the things that you just talked about together to make the projections over the next 12 months show that Southern wouldn't be harmed. I don't think it's a good deal. I think the whole asset transfer from the beginning was a mistake, but, I can't go back and undo something. But I believe it is a equitable solution that both sides come out the best that we're going to be able to do moving forward. It doesn't harm Southern's customers financially by moving forward. I hope that answered your question.
Well, I mean, it does and it doesn't. What are the ramifications to Southern Water and Sewer District if the Public Service Commission refused to basically approve this amended agreement and just required the parties to unwind everything they had done? My understanding is, at that point in time, Southern would owe Prestonsburg the amount that it's been paid so far of $2,140,000, and there's more than that, plus the fact that Prestonsburg has replaced all the meters, haven't they?
Yes, sir.
On the Betsy Lane, Stanville Betsy Lane, and made other upgrades.
That's
And if
correct.
that were the case, could Southern possibly come up with that kind of money to basically reimburse Prestonsburg for the amount of money it's spent to upgrade Southern's system?
No, sir. I would like to add that Mr. Music and I and the board at Southern, we spent months looking at and trying. That was my original preference. We wanted to try to unwind the deal, but there is no way that Southern Water could obtain $2.14 million to repay them for the initial amount that they paid us, let alone any upgrades. It would be, in my opinion, it would be financially impossible for Southern Water to come up with the money to repay Prestonsburg City Utilities and retake these customers. Without the approval of this deal, we are just left in limbo because we could not borrow that kind of money and to unwind the deal, because we have spent several months looking at that option, and that would be our preference, but it's not financially possible to do so, in my opinion, sir.
It's basically making the best of what, through nobody's fault, that's here in this room, the best of a bad situation, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I would 100% agree with that statement.
Now, a couple of other things. One, I think, well, I know that under the original agreement, there was a freeze on rates.
Yes, sir.
So that for 3 years after closing, Prestonsburg, for instance, agreed not to raise the rates, water rates, at the Stanville, in the Stanville Betsy Lane system. Is that still part of this agreement, or once this, assuming this agreement as amended is now approved, will Prestonsburg still be bound to maintain the same rates that are now has or had from 2016 or 17 on for another 3 years?
No, sir. My opinion of the amendment is, the asset purchase agreement amendment would leave the dates of those. So, in my opinion, as of January 1st, 2020, Prestonsburg had the right to raise their rates. If this asset purchase agreement is approved by the Public Service Commission, the 3-year time period is already elapsed, in my opinion, and they would be at liberty to raise the rates upon the completion of this.
The reason I say that, and we may have to, when we consider this, do some amending of some of this language. I'm sure that RD won't care as long as it gets its $1,600,000, but it says at page 15, numerical paragraph 11, 15 and 16, the schedule of Southern District's current rates for monthly water service is attached at Exhibit 2. The city and PCUC agree that following the closing, PCUC shall charge these rates to persons in the Pyramid and Stanville, Betsy Lane, Harold areas for water service and shall not increase these rates for at least 3 years following the date of closing. But there never was a closing on the water assets, correct?
That's correct, in my opinion.
Well, as far as you're concerned, I know you haven't considered it, or your commissioners haven't considered it, but would you be willing to consider basically altering that sentence to basically permit Prestonsburg to charge those customers the rates that it charges other people in the city? Now, I don't even know what those are. They may be more, they may be less. But is there any particular reason at this time to have that clause in the contract when Prestonsburg has already kept those rates at the same rate despite substantial investments in that part of the system for 3 years, that will now extend it for at least 6 years? Isn't that correct?
Yeah. I believe that Prestonsburg City Utilities Commission has lived up to the intent of the original agreement. They've kept those rates consistent for 3 years, and it would be my opinion that they should be allowed to raise rates to what the other county water customers they serve pay upon the closing of the agreement. In my opinion, that 3 years has already taken place, and they shouldn't be burdened with another 3 years.
Well, you may have to do a little massaging of that language, and anyway, we can, that's up to you all, I guess. The first appraisal that was done that basically raised the temperature of the Public Service Commission was apparently where the city of Prestonsburg, or Prestonsburg City Utility Commission, hired, found, designated, and agreed to pay the appraiser, but the ostensible customer of that appraiser was Southern, but based upon the general manager's testimony at the time, he never even talked to the appraiser. Now, what I want to ask you is, in this case, Dean Dorton, or what I always thought was Dean Dorton Ford, from Lexington, Kentucky, was the company that performed the appraisal at $1,510,000, something, $1,510,960, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, who paid for that appraisal?
Prestonburg City Utilities paid for the appraisal. Southern, the
Let me
Public
ask
Service
this, let me
Commission,
clear it up, I think I can. They paid for the appraisal, what influence, if any, did you or did Southern Water District have in picking the person who did the appraisal? Did you have any influence in
yes.
that at all?
Southern Water and Sewers Board picked the company, we picked Dean Dorton to do the appraisal. So we chose the entity to do it. Prestonburg agreed to pay. Then myself and Mr. Grondel, at certain points, we had probably a phone conference once a week with Dean Dorton, the appraisal, and Mr. Music. We provided information, we were given information. The process took months of gathering information. So there was a lot of input and reviewing of data by myself, and Mr. Potter was instrumental in being able to obtain billing records, helping with determining operating cost, and just a whole host of things that are far too many for me to even mention in this. Southern Water and Sewer picked the company to do the appraisal. Prestonburg agreed to pay for the appraisal, and we were all very much in supplying the information and reviewing the documentation as the appraisal process went forward.
So are you satisfied that the appraisal is fair, reasonable, and accurate?
Yes, sir, I am.
One last question. No lawyer can ask this one last question, but the Southern needed new water meters because, as I remember, 700 to 750 water meters in its system were basically not functioning. Is that substantially correct?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
And then the Southern was advised that it was the recipient, or would be the recipient, of like $1,400,000 or $1,600,000, something, from abandoned mine lands money.
Yes,
In order, and it was supposed to use that money to replace the meters, correct?
that's correct.
Right. Now, because something had to be done immediately, the Public Service Commission granted a surcharge to Southern of $5 and something a month on all of its customers in order to basically try to get enough money so that Southern could get a loan and replace the meters, and the surcharge money would assist in repaying the loan, correct?
That's correct. As a matter of fact, the financing company used the actual surcharge as collateral, if you will, to provide that loan to us.
Right. And that was our intent when we did it. But we also knew that the AML money had been designated for meters. And we were told that, nothing in writing, that AML money would ultimately still come to Prestonsburg to Southern, and Southern would be able to use it for infrastructure replacement and improvements. What I want to ask you is, has Southern gotten any of the AML money to date?
No, but we expect it within the next 30 to 60 days. They've actually asked us to create a bank account for those funds. We expect to receive the $1.5 million from AML in the next perhaps 30 days. And that money is already earmarked for Lackey to Wayland line replacement for a very dilapidated section of line where we've had repeated problems. As soon as the money becomes available, and Mr. Potter can answer in much more detail than I can, we expect to very soon get an engineering firm to start the engineering process of that replacement. So we expect the money very soon, and I have received correspondence that indicates it would be possibly even as soon as the next month.
Now, what is the status of your meter replacements?
Currently, and Mr. Potter can answer more detailed questions, currently all of the residential meters have been replaced with new radio read meters, and they're working on some of the commercial meters, the larger ones. There has been a glitch, if you will, and COVID-19's held up some of the computer equipment and software for reading the meters, but we hope to have that in place perhaps within 30 days, that we can begin reading the entire system, switching over to volumetric reading, which I think more importantly, as we start to read these meters, then we can really go back to a focus on water loss. Because the new meters we have read down to the gallon, so the billing records, the speed of reading the meters will be able to really give us a lot more accurate data on being able to separate out sections that have high water loss. I'm a bit excited to get those meters up and start reading them, because we can start addressing some of the long-term problems that we've had with water loss and get some true numbers on what our water loss truly is and work from that toward improving the system.
If you retain and then assume operational control of the 110 or 15 customers at the pyramid system, does Southern have sufficient money to replace those meters with the radio read meters?
Yes, Mr. Potter says we have enough funding left from our original loan that we can replace those meters on the pyramid distribution system to make it uniform with our current radio read meters that we're using. He even looked into changing the radio read part of the meters that's in the system, and it's more financially feasible just to change the meter than it was to start trying to take them apart and change the radio read. But our intention is, if the Public Service Commission approves this purchase agreement, that we would change the meters in the pyramid area, and we have funding to do so.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Ms. Vincel, anything further?
I just have a few things further. I apologize, I'm going to do something I don't like to do. I'm going to read the law.
Okay.
I want, given the nature of our discussion about the ability to disconnect for non-payment of the sewer bill, let me refer you, just in general, for your information as you all are pondering this.
Okay.
First to KRS 74.407, subpart 4, which reads, if a water district that provides sewer services is not I'm sorry, I've read this one wrong. I mean, let me have you just go and look at that particular section. It also refers you to KRS chapter 96.930 to 96.943.
Okay. And if I may repeat these to make sure I've got the right numbers down, Kentucky Revised Statute 74.407 subsection 4 and Kentucky Revised Statutes 96.930 through 96.943.
Yes, and actually, I'm going to say I was incorrect about subpart 4. But the statutes address this very issue about where a water district is collecting fees for sewer services provided by a different entity.
Okay.
And there are also commission decisions on it. I think from particularly the vice chairman's questionings, the question about the disconnection for service needs to be clarified further.
Yes, I agree.
And staff has no further.
Okay, Mr. McNally, any questions?
No.
Mr. Bailey?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Chandler?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to follow up on what Ms. Vincel was discussing there. Mr. Prater, we were talking about the agreement that says that the partial payments from a customer, this is in regards to the area that the tariffs of Prestonsburg will be applied to the sewer customers, but the water customers will be Southerns. The financial agreement says that any partial payments received from a customer shall be first applied to any amount due to the district for utility services, and the remaining portion of the payment, if any, shall be applied to the amounts charged by the agency. So, first I'll just ask, do you know what the intent was with that provision?
I assume the intent was that to protect Southern's interest in that the water service would take priority over the sewer or the wastewater.
So
I don't
let me just
know.
ask. Let me ask this, Mr. Prater. If there's a concern that, let's just say hypothetically, there's a concern that legally Southern would not be able to disconnect due to somebody not paying Prestonsburg's bill, right, or the sewer portion of the bill. If, for instance, the partial payments went to the agency, which would be the sewer portion of the bill first, then any non-payment would necessarily apply to the water district's service, right?
Yes, that's correct. If any partial payment was credited to this wastewater side first, then any delinquency would theoretically should end up on the water service side.
And there's no, as you understand it, you just get to follow your tariffs as it relates to delinquency and disconnections due to non-payment for water service pursuant to your all's tariffs, right?
That's my understanding, yes, sir.
Okay. And so, to me, this seems beneficial to the district insofar as the district gets the money first. But based on the conversation and the questions today, can you speak on behalf of the district as to whether or not you all would have a concern if the agency's monies were applied first in the event there were partial payments?
No, I don't think that would be an issue. I do understand I do understand the issue that you've brought up, and I do believe that we need to have that clarified before we move forward. I would tend to, I personally would tend to lean toward the 50-50 split of any partial payments, as in that would, I think that would accomplish the same goal. But I don't think the Southern District would be opposed to either option.
That's all I have, Chairman. Thank you.
Commissioner Matthews?
I don't have anything.
I have nothing further. May this witness be excused?
Yes, you may.
You may step down now, Mr. Prater. Why don't we take basically a 7 or 8 minute break till 25 till 11 and allow our custodian to come in and basically sanitize the witness booth. Thank you. We'll be in recess until 25 minutes until 11. Prestonsburg City Utility Commission, I understood at break that you wanted to enlighten the commission and for the record, the status of the Prestonsburg City Utility Commission as it pertains to the city of Prestonsburg. Is that correct?
That would be
Okay.
fine.
All right, please go ahead and do so.
Vice Chairman Chandler, most city utilities are an agency of the city and are organized under Chapter 96 of the Kentucky Revised Statutes. Prestonsburg is probably one or two city utilities are organized differently. They're organized under Chapter 58 of the Kentucky statutes. It's a public project. So as a consequence, it's independent of the city. The city's only control is through two things. The mayor of the city appoints the commissioners, but he has no other say-so. It's an independent body. The other aspect the city is involved with is whenever there's going to be a revenue bond issue for the utility operations, the city has to be involved in that, and that's mainly for tax purposes, to make sure it's a municipal obligation. So just that little point of clarification as to the differences in the signature lines in the agreement. The original agreement, it said Prestonsburg with agency. In my opinion, I don't think that's correct. So I my first draft of the First Amendment didn't have signature line for the city because the city has normally no involvement in that. We've done many agreements. They've been filed with public service commissions. The city's not been involved in those because it's a Chapter 58. Any questions? Or is that?
No, and I don't necessarily disagree or have a position on it, but you would you all concede that they are a party to the initial agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
That could possibly have been, I wasn't involved then, but possibly it was because there was a revenue bond issued at approximately that time by rural development. So that may have been the reason for the city signing off on the agreement. That's the way when they're doing a project with a bond ordinance, they're going to be issuing a new bond. The city does get involved in those agreements, signs off on them. So that's possibly why they were there. I don't know.
And with that being the case, and this being an amendment to that specific agreement, do you all have an objection to getting their acquiescence in writing?
I don't think it would be a problem. The city would probably be cooperative, but I don't represent the city. That's another issue. The city has separate counsel. I just only represent the utility commission.
No, I don't. I understand that. I just want to make sure that if we're going to approve an amendment to an agreement, that all the parties to the initial agreement are at least aware.
The mayor has been involved. He's knowledgeable of it, but we can approach the mayor and ask if the city would sign off on it. We could add maybe some kind of signature page or some kind of agreement to ratify and confirm it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNally. Are you ready to call your next witness, Ms. Vincent?
Yes, I am, Chairman. Staff calls Mr. Potter.
Mr. Potter, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Please be seated. You may ask.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Potter.
Good morning.
I think there's a lot of follow-up questions. I'm going to start with some more general ones, and I'm going to ask you to fill in the gaps as you can.
Okay.
Let me start with, I'm sorry, let me start back. Can you, on the record, say what your position is in terms of Southern Water District?
Yes, I work for Utility Management Group. We're currently under a management emergency type contract with them. I'm our special projects coordinator, although I do have a project manager down there, Randy Conley. I assist him with things outside his purview right now, like funding, hydraulics, those kind of things. So it's one of my clients I help represent, yes.
Thank you. Can you give a general assessment in regard to the amended asset transfer and what impact it will have on Southern's operations?
My main concern, and Mr. Chairman Prater talked to me about early on, like I said, unwinding the deal and these kind of things. That would have been the worst thing that probably could have happened for both entities, in my opinion. I think this is the best deal they can do, like you said, with what we got. I just wanted to ensure that any deal that was made would not hurt them financially, and I don't think this deal will. I think it's the best you can make of the situation. I think they'll be okay financially, and like Mr. Prater said, it's projected $58,000 or so in revenue, but I still got to put men out there. I got to fix line and brakes, so I think it'll break even or maybe make a little. So I think we'll be all right with it. Now it's on the pyramid system. That's letting Prestonsburg go ahead and have the 1,100 or whatever customers on US 23, and that kind of makes sense. They're feeding their water to it. That water actually that Southern used to feed to that sector, when they had it, they bought the water from Pikeville. They cannot hydraulically feed it. So it makes a little more sense for Prestonsburg to have that section anyways. So the pyramid system and what they're doing, I think it's probably a win-win for both entities at this point.
Can you expand on that, why you think it's a win-win? for
Well, I mean,
both
if I was Prestonsburg and they have the sewer on US 23, it's really convenient to have the customers. It's easier to operate, just like what you all are talking about. Who disconnects? How do you handle it? And it's easier when one entity has both. And it wins for us because, and helps Prestonsburg on the pyramid system. That's sort of out there for them. I don't understand how that actually got into the original agreement. I wasn't in it. It's sort of hanging out there, 100 and some customers out here on this side of the county. So it's easier for us to take care of and get it off them.
Thank you. Do you know very much about the pyramid system, like what its status is of the infrastructure, the
It's one of the
meters?
older sections of the system. As far as I know, there's not a lot of issues. It's not a high-pressure zone. It's about 120 customers. US 23, of course, is the newer part of the system. They had some of the newer. But I think it's indicative or in a little better shape than some of the older parts of the southern wastewater, or water structure.
Do you know what the water loss rate is for that?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and say, I've been round and round with your people. They want inspections, answer the leaky 11 or whatever you call it. I cannot give you any estimate. I've not read it since June of last year. And that's like me asking you how much gas is in your car and your fuel tank gauge don't work. I cannot expound on that. I'm like Mr. Prater, I'm excited to get meters in, start doing volumetric reading. That way I can actually know what I'm looking at. It's shooting in the dark right now. If you don't know what you sell, you don't know where it's going.
Fair enough, fair enough. I should have been clear, I was speaking about water loss for the pyramid system. But
I
I
would
can
have
ask
to ask
Mr.
Mr.
Music.
Music on that one. I've not really, I've seen some of the numbers, but I really don't know at this point.
And your statements about the water loss on their southern system, it's understood and it's
Yeah.
a fair statement.
I love it when PSC calls, you haven't turned in your paperwork. Well, tell me how to do it. I don't know what I'm selling. Anyways, but we'll go on.
Okay. Do you know what kind of meters are installed on the pyramid system?
I think y'all have hot rods, Hershey's, I believe, over there. Neptune meters.
Neptune?
Yes.
And they're radio read meters?
Yes. That's Prestonsburg standard meters they utilize.
And I should probably ask Mr. Music how old they are. Would you suggest, or do you know?
I think they probably we've spoke back and forth, but I think they put them in about 3 or 4 years ago when you got it in 2015, 16. I think they assumed the water, taking care of it, from what I see, July 2016. So I assume they bought new meters and put in at that time.
Given that these are newer but the radio read as opposed to the AMI. What would Southern's plan be for
Well,
meters on
AMI and
the,
AMR is the same thing, basically. AMI is fixed-based infrastructure, AMR is radio read, but they both work off of radio read frequency. They radio read theirs. The only issue, and we talked earlier about like switching to our radio transmitter head, but there's, without getting down in the weeds a lot, there's a 4-pole system and a 2-pole system, and Neptune's used a 4-pole system, but what we got based upon a 2-pole system, by the time I buy what I need to retrofit theirs, I could get a whole new meter and start with brand new on my meters for about $40 more. So that's why we're deciding to go with our system.
so you, if this is approved, then Southern would switch out these.
That's our plan as of right now, yes.
Okay. Would you have any plan for selling the?
Actually, I've spoke with Chairman Prater, we can put them on the open market or offer them back to Prestonsburg. Yes, we would sell the meters. I'm assuming they would be ours if it gets shifted back to us.
That was going to be one of my next questions,
Well, I mean,
but I
I think
wasn't
if you
sure.
read the original agreement, any water improvements, they do at their own risk. Prestonsburg, I think that's what it said. So, hey, if you put a new widget in there and I get it back, it's mine.
You've spoken about the status of the AMI meters and that residential is done.
Yes.
How far along is the installation on the commercial customers?
Our projection is, if everything stays steady, within 3 to 4 weeks, we'll be complete. We've run into some issues with plumbing on some of the meter bases where we're having to retrofit older bases with newer technology, different type of meters. So 3 to 4 weeks, I think the project will be done. The chairman did sign off on last board meeting, a 90% substantial completion for the company. They had 5,400 meters in and online. We're just really waiting for our infrastructure, the meter read, the laptops to read, the transmitter and radio read to come in. They've had some issues with their suppliers due to the COVID situation getting stock in.
Understood. And I apologize for looking down. I'm trying to write the time so that I can,
Okay.
I want you to know I am listening very carefully. I'm making notes. In terms of those laptops, do you have a sense when they might be delivered?
The last contact last week, I spoke with the company that will be training us, our meter company. He said his last correspondence was they should be there within 2 weeks. So that would be about another week if it holds.
Okay. Going back to a timeline for a commission decision, with what Chairman Prater said, that it would really be a good situation if a commission order could be out so that this could be in effect October 1st. It sounds like that lines up somewhat with the installation of the commercial meter so that the crew could then move over to Pyramid. Is that correct?
I think that'll work. Hopefully they won't be out from me, and that way we could do those residentials over there. That would work well, I hope.
And the chairman may want to explore a little bit more about the question about some of the grants that have come in, like
Yes.
the AML. But let me follow up on a couple items that Chairman Prater referenced. Can you tell me the status of the AML funds that will be going to Wayland Lackey line
Yes.
replacement?
The latest information I have on those was about right before our board meeting last week. The county judge of Floyd County had been in contact with AML because we sort of routed it through them for the funding. They said to expect the MOA, it's in legal, The MOA should get to us in about 3 weeks or so. And once the MOA gets in, it'll have to be reviewed by our legal, signed by them, send it back. Then we'll start jumping the hoops that AML, like engineering procurement, do your score sheets, those kind of things. So, but I think it's really going to happen this time. And Chairman Schmidt was correct earlier. I was under the assumption at one point, you've got meter money from AML. I think actually when it got down to Washington, or up to Washington, in the vetting process, I believe OSM got nervous trying to figure out how meters would be economic development, and it become jeopardized. Plus, the time frame to get the money in was out there, and we wanted a shorter time frame to get meters in, and that's how the surcharge came about, which didn't enable us to do that. But in the process of all that happening, we switched the money into another project, and we did get awarded, and that will be the money. So I'm thinking 3 weeks maybe to get the MOA from them, and then let it go through the board's process, and then we'll start doing the other hoops. And that will be for 20,000 linear feet of line replacements. It's actually in the Kentucky Water Information Resource System. Approximately 500 customers, new service lines, new meter bases installed. It's a problem area in the Wayland. It's an older part of the system, a lot of AC line, a lot of the main line runs beside the creek and the river. We actually just got funding for a section that went out in that area back in December. It's actually temporarily repaired. The creek bank went away. I did get funding, and we went through the hoops and done what we need to do. Emergency money, $248,000 through ARC. So I'm just waiting. Of course, the engineer's been procured. All that's happened. The engineer submitted his information to Division Water, so it'll be in review for 45 days. And I'm just waiting on the funding source to send the MOA. They said, go ahead and get it done. We'll send you an MOA, and we're waiting on that too, so we can start drawing down the monies. And I have made 2 or 3 newer projects for funding that needs to be done at Southern. Some rehabilitation to the water plant, a major line replacement project for a lot of the sidelines that are old. We actually found some lines. We had a leak last week, a 3-inch line that goes up into an area. It wasn't even laid with water line. It was gray conduit pipe. It's not even rated for water. And I've assessed a bunch of the areas. It's about a $1.7 million project to relay a lot of sidelines that are in bad shape. But I put that in under the COVID-19 Phase 4 funding that may come from Washington at some point. So I made several more projects for those. And I'm constantly trying to find funding from agencies for Southern Water.
Staff has no further questions.
Mr. McNally?
I have no questions.
Mr. Paley?
None, Your Honor.
Vice Chairman Chandler?
Just one, and again, you shouldn't trust me, Chairman, if I didn't say just one. I just want to understand, now that you've had a significant amount of experience there, what percent of Southern's customers are commercial customers?
I couldn't hardly hear him. Or what?
What percent of Southern's customers are commercial?
I think out of 5,400, 55, it fluctuates with disconnects. I think we have close to 180 commercial customers, whatever the percentage ratio of that breaks out to be.
And historically, have they been served by larger meter sizes?
It's usually 1 inch or larger. Some of those are 3-inch, 4-inch, yes. Some of them, yeah. Usually larger meters, yes, sir.
And so once the meters are installed, do you anticipate that there's going to be some sort of proposal from Southern to charge them different rates than the rest of the customer base?
I don't think we can for at least a year according to our latest order. We have to do a year of volumetric reading, then approach PSC again for a rate increase or decrease to see where we're at after a year of volumetric reading. At that point, we'll have to see what kind of data we get in with a year, and we'll try to, if it needs to be structured that way, we may have to do it that way, or take the recommendation of Public Service Commission.
All right, thanks.
Anything further, Mr. Chandler? Dr. Matthews, any questions?
I just had a question about those commercial customers. How many of those are in the area that was given to Prestonsburg?
I would not know because since I've been there, they've not been a customer of
Okay.
Southern, and I
But-
don't have a record of them.
Yeah, but there are some commercial customers on that corridor,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am, you are correct, yes. And I don't know the exact amount, but yes, they are.
Okay. So Southern lost some high volume customers with that deal. Higher volume customers with that deal.
I assume so, yes.
Okay, that's all I have.
Just a couple, Mr. Potter. If the commission refused to approve this amended agreement, the terms of the amended agreement, and the transaction had to be completely unwound with the parties basically insofar as the water distribution systems are concerned, could Southern afford to repay Prestonsburg the $2,140,000 that had previously been paid on its behalf, and pay for the meters and the other upgrades that were made at Pyramid and the Stanville, Betsy Lane section?
I don't think Southern could pay back the 2.4 million at all. Now, I have a different opinion on the upgrades. I think they've done that on their own dime, on the water.
Well, I understand.
Yeah, but no, they could not, sir. You're correct. There's no
Well,
way
you
they
know,
could. It would
you-
financially hurt.
You take the position that Prestonsburg did that just out of the goodness of its heart. It thought it was getting the system, isn't that correct? And if that would be a benefit if Southern got it back with $1 million worth of improvements made to it.
Yes.
Don't you think that equitably, that Southern would be required or should be required to reimburse Prestonsburg on some basis?
Well, I don't know about, yes, it probably would. You should, probably. I agree, but it would hurt. I know what the agreement said, and it's kind of like they knew what they was getting into.
Let me ask you this, when it became apparent that Southern needed basically to replace all of its meters, which were old,
Yes.
and apparently were basically running slow or weren't running metering at all, is that correct?
Yes, sir. There were a lot of issues.
And as a result of that, basically, the surcharge of $5 plus was put into effect in order to be able to do that, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes.
And because who knew when the AML money would ever get there, and it isn't there even today, correct?
Yes, sir.
And there's some question about whether they would have permitted the money to be spent on meters in the first place, correct?
Yes, sir.
In order to basically fund the new meters that were required, Southern had to borrow money, correct?
Yes.
And even with the surcharge of $5.60 or whatever per meter, did Southern have trouble borrowing money?
Yes, sir. I contacted several entities, Kentucky Rural Water, several places. They were hesitant to even, I finally did find a place that would, but yes, it was very difficult.
The whole purpose of the surcharge was to basically provide a method of payment, but even at that, there was little, if any, interest in anybody loaning Southern any money. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
Right. Which would mean, which would, I guess, lend support to my statement that if this transfer isn't somehow approved, Southern basically takes it on the chin.
Yes, sir.
Essentially, they will go under. Wasn't
Yes,
that
sir.
essentially true?
Yes. Yeah, there's no way they could handle 2.1, that debt, no way.
You can't unwind it at this point, so it's a question of just making the best of what it turned out to be a bad situation, maybe for everybody.
Yes,
Correct?
sir. I agree.
No further questions. Ms. Mansell?
I have nothing further.
Mr. McNally?
None.
Mr. Bailey? Vice Chairman Chandler?
Nothing, Chairman.
Dr. Matthews?
No, sir.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, you may.
Mr. Potter, thank you. You may sit down. I guess we need to take another, 5, 10 minutes. Let's come back at 11:15 and finish up with Mr. Music. We'll be in recess while we sanitize the witness box. Okay, we're now back on the record. Ms. Wenzel, do you have another witness to call?
Yes, sir. Brian Music.
Mr. Music. Please raise your right hand, Mr. Music. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please be seated. Ms. Wenzel, you may ask.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Music. Could you tell me about your position with Prestonburg City Utility Commission?
I'm the superintendent of the utilities.
And how long have you been superintendent?
I think it was in June of 2019.
Can you tell me about the improvements that I'm going to call it PCUC, made to the system, the pyramid portion of the system?
On Pyramid, we've changed out the meters, the water meters, and just made some repairs on the lines.
Do you have an estimate of how much, what the cost was that you expended on those upgrades?
The meters are about $200 a piece, and I think there was about 120.
And do you know what the water loss rate is just in that portion of the system?
I do not. Prestonsburg can't serve the entire system. There's a portion that's along the hill going up to the tank that we can't hydraulically serve. And Southern has been supplementing that water, so I wouldn't have a way to calculate that.
And what role does that situation play in the reason why Prestonsburg City Utility Commission is agreeing for Southern to regain ownership?
The original intent was to build a new tank and a pump station, but once we went into design, but when it stalled, we put the project on hold, and now realizing we're going to be paying rural development another $1.6 million. Funding that is come in question. So that kind of led to offering the return.
And the improvements to the I'm just going to call it the Stanville area. Do you have an approximate cost of what the improvements were that were made to that area?
I think there was about 1,000 meters that we changed. We've replaced the 12-inch altitude valve at the Stanville tank, which was about $10,000. We've made various repairs on leaks. We've installed a couple of meters that was probably around $15,000 a piece.
And that was like maybe 2 or 3 of those that were replaced?
Yes.
And the 1,000 meters, they were also similar to what was changed out in Pyramid, so they were about $200 each?
Yes.
The Neptune radio read meters?
Right.
We've talked today here about the provision in the original asset purchase agreement, and before I say that as background, let me reiterate that Turner Campbell was superintendent at that time that the original agreement was entered into. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you were not part of those negotiations or discussions?
No, I was water distribution supervisor at that time.
So as we've discussed in paragraph 11 of the original agreement, there is a provision that the City of Prestonsburg and Prestonsburg City Utility Commission entered into to keep the rates in the Pyramid and the Stanville sections the same for 3 years after closing. Has PCUC evaluated that particular contract provision and made a determination what it will do with that provision?
I have not looked at that. The reason being is because it states that upon transfer, and having not transferred, I've not looked at it.
Okay. And would you agree that probably is one of the terms that would be looked at
Yes.
as part of any clarification for the amended agreement? Staff has no further questions at this time.
Mr. Bailey, questions?
No questions.
Mr. McNally?
Let me look at my notes a second. I have one, Your Honor. Ms. Music, is it your expectation that Southern Water would disconnect their water customer if that water customer doesn't pay the sewer bill in the eastern and Wayland areas?
I believe so, yeah.
Chairman, that's all the questions I have at this time.
Vice Chairman Chandler, questions?
All right, thanks, Chairman. So to that last question, Mr. Music, would you agree that the agreements are not particularly clear on that point?
Yes, sir.
So, to the questions I had for Mr. Prater earlier, would you have any problem with the commission either prorating partial payments or, other than the 3% fee, placing the partial payment onto the sewer service first for those co-serve customers?
No, Prestonsburg would have no problem.
And the questions I was asking Mr. Prater earlier about the capitalized term designated water assets in the amendment, you have the same understanding as Mr. Prater as to what those assets are referring to, in that they are describing the pyramid system that's colored in green in PSC staff exhibit number 1, and the former Sandy Valley water distribution system that's colored red in PSC staff exhibit 1?
Yes, that is correct. That is my understanding.
Okay. That's all I have, Chairman. Thanks.
Dr. Matthews, questions?
I don't have any.
Mr. Music, does the city of Prestonsburg charge customers outside of its city limits a higher water rate than the customers inside the city limits?
Yes, sir.
And what is the difference? On a typical residential customer, what's the difference in the rates?
I believe it's about 6 cents per 100.
Now, after Prestonsburg acquired operational control of the Stanville Betsy Lane system, did it maintain, and has it maintained the rates that were in effect at the time it took control?
Yes.
And how do those rates compare to the present rates that other Floyd County non-Prestonsburg customers pay for water?
The Southern has, I believe it's 2406 is their minimum. We charge a meter service fee depending on the size of the meter, and then calculate just off the per 100 gallon. I'm not sure. I believe our rate might be probably comparable, pretty close.
About the same?
I think so.
So that basically, if the provision of the contract allowed you to change rates rather than wait another 3 years after closing, assuming commission approval. I suspect that's what Prestonsburg City Utility Commission would like the option of doing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, about how much, what's your guesstimate or best estimate of how much money Prestonsburg has invested in the Stanville Betsy Lane system since it acquired operational control in 2017?
I would say it's easily $500,000 or $600,000.
In the beginning, I guess the original agreement, Prestonsburg was to acquire the 3 wastewater systems, Harold, Wayland, and Eastern, plus the 2 water distribution systems, Stanville, Betsy Lane, and Pyramid for $2,140,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, under the proposed new agreement, Prestonsburg, which has already acquired the 3 wastewater systems, will acquire Stanville Betsy Lane water distribution system, but Southern will keep the Pyramid system, correct?
That is correct.
So for for fewer assets, Prestonsburg is paying substantially more money. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Has Prestonsburg, or did Prestonsburg already pay in cash or cash in kind, equipment and whatever, to Southern before it was learned that that rural development would not approve the transaction? Had Prestonsburg already paid $2,140,000 to or on behalf of Southern?
Yes.
Now, if in addition to that $2,140,000, Prestonsburg now is required to pay rural development an additional $1,600,000, is that correct?
That is correct.
And that's applicable only to this water asset water assets that comprise Stanville Betsy Lane, so that they'll release their lien, is that correct?
That is correct.
Then in addition, Prestonsburg is paying or forgiving $137,500 in Southern's debt to Prestonsburg, correct?
That's correct.
Now, at some point, and correct me if I'm wrong, did Prestonsburg actually pay the Floyd Fiscal Court $100,000?
I think it was $158,000.
$158,000. So whatever this deal cost Southern, Prestonsburg took a real hosing, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
I have no further questions. Anything, Ms. Mansell?
Nothing further.
Mr. Bailey?
No, no.
Mr. McNally?
One clarification question. I think previous witness mentioned that the Stanville area was a newer part of the system. Could you maybe comment about the age of the water distribution system, going back when it was in ancient history?
The original Sandy Valley portion, as from my understanding, I think the plans that we have, it shows in the 70s or 80s.
And do you know what type of water lines were laid in that area?
It's asbestos cement, most of it. Some of it's PVC, some of it's polyethylene.
What is the expected life expectancy of those cement asbestos water lines?
I think you could probably fairly well say maybe 50 to 70 years is my understanding.
So are you anticipating that you're going to have to do some rehabilitation work in that area in the future?
Yes.
Could that possibly include replacement of most of the service lines in that area, the entire water distribution system?
We've been working on the service lines, which are basically polyethylene, but the mains, yes, we will have to, at some point, address the AC and run new lines.
That's all the questions I have.
Vice Chairman Chandler, questions?
No, Chairman.
What'd you say, no questions?
Yes.
Okay.
He said no question.
No questions, I'm sorry.
All right, no.
I couldn't hear. Dr. Matthews, questions?
No questions.
Okay. Is there anything else, Ms. Mansell?
Nothing else.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Mr. Music. You may step down and you're excused. Is there another witness, Ms. Mansell, or does this conclude the evidence?
This concludes the evidence.
I want to give, I guess, the parties through their counsel an opportunity if they want to say anything at this point about the transaction, or I'm assuming that both sides are that all parties are in favor of closing it on some basis. Mr. Bailey, do you have anything
Your Honor,
additional to say?
Nothing additional. I just think this is the only way out for both parties.
Okay. Mr. McNally?
One comment, I do think we do need to amend the financial service agreement for the collection of the sewer fees. I think we need some clarification there. And as to the term designated water assets, that was picked up from one of the documents that were done. I don't remember, I've looked in the asset purchase agreement. I'm not sure if it's there or one of those two operating, there's actually two operating agreements that they were done, and it was, I think, maybe a term used in one of those operating agreements, and it was a whereas clause. It was just explanatory, was the intent. So, and then one other comment about, I was wanting to be sure that RD approved the transaction for any money was paid, and I was hoping they would agree to sign off on that's why their signature lines in the agreement. But they said they would have to refer it to legal, and that would be a delay for that. So they said if we just do it the way we've done it, where they sign the application and a letter, the approval would be much quicker. And so we acquiesced to that process.
Well, I think it's obvious they have approved. They've given the letter. They agreed to basically eliminate their lien on those assets. So I think they'd be held to that.
Yeah.
Especially in an election year, don't you?
I was comfortable with their paperwork they provided. But considering the history of this case, and they initially refused to consent when everybody thought they would, I wanted it in writing somewhere, somehow.
All right. I guess the issue is, I think there are probably 3 or 4 small, I don't know if they're small, but areas that the commission will probably want to see cleaned up or changed, minor details, and perhaps we can get something out through staff council on that and see, or work out some way in order to be able to take care of those, and see if you all can comply.
Yes, I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page in agreement of what those issues were. Clarifying the question of termination for non-payment of sewer fees. The question about the rates in the Stanville, Betsy Lane, Herald area from the original agreement. The question of Pretzensburg's ratification, and I think we probably don't need to address the question of rural development signature line on the agreement, or do you think?
No, I don't think we do, myself.
I wanted to make sure about that. So those are really the 3 issues that I see. And I know that the parties have said that they will look at this. We can get a request for information to clarify that and have the parties refile the documents. But I think if we do the request for information, that will get it on the record and a response. And I can get that out by tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Bensel, if there is an agreement that defines designated water assets that the party signatories do, If they could file that into record, that would be very helpful.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Well, is there anything further? If not, then this hearing is hereby adjourned. Thank you all very much.